Fortnite Creative has gone through a lot of change ever since it was introduced 7 years ago. While nowadays the Discover page is home to brain rot maps, tycoons, squid games, it wasn't always like this. So what exactly led us here? How did we go from Creative being home to some of Fortnite's most iconic moments and content creators to also being a breeding ground for shady developers and even some major lawsuits? And despite all of that, why am I still confident that the future of Fortnite Creative is looking brighter than ever? To answer all of these questions, we need to look back to before Fortnite Creative even released. Because players were making their own custom game modes long before we had the proper tools to do it. And one content creator in particular would end up standing out as one of the biggest early pioneers. Of course, I'm talking about Lachlan. Thanks to the release of custom matchmaking in January of 2018, he would become iconic for his custom hide and seek lobbies long before anyone else was really doing them. But Lachlan wasn't the only Fortnite icon who stood out as an early creative pioneer. Because just 6 months later, Playground Mode would be introduced and a couple of small creators named Laserbeam and Nick A30 would jump in to cook up their own ideas. Many of the classic game modes that are now commonplace in your creative feeds started in Playground Mode. Laserbeam was doing Capture the Flag, Nick A30 was creating Spleef games with Sancho West, Mustard Plays was making his own Mario Kart tracks, and even Typical Gamer got into the mix, making his own obstacle course and even a Castle Wars map that felt very similar to the Red vs. Blue map we see today. But not long after its release, most players were already bored of Playground Mode. You had limited control over the island settings, a max of 4 players, and nothing besides normal builds and traps to create things with. After a few months, Epic did try to spice things up with the addition of the Spiky Stadium Grenade and later the Porta Challenge grenades. These were neat little additions that essentially allowed you to instantly create some of the mini games the community had already been trying to make by hand. While these definitely gave us some funny moments like Dr. Lupo dueling Tim the Tatman in the Spiky Stadium, or Allie and Lachlan going 1v1 in the Porta Challenges, the novelty wore off quickly and players were ready for more. Luckily, in December of 2018, the growing community of amateur creators would finally get some proper tools with the release of Fortnite Creative. The first year for Creative Mode was massive. Epic started by flying out 15 of the biggest Fortnite content creators to their offices in North Carolina to try it before everyone else. Creators like Myth, Lachlan, and Wildcat all got to team up to create the first 4 community-made maps we ever got to play. Even the die-hard Battle Royale players couldn't ignore the new mode. When the block was introduced onto the island, the block acted as a community-made POI that would periodically replace existing POIs throughout the map. Players could create their own designs and submit them to be chosen every single week. The block was popular enough to stick around for 4 seasons until we finally had to say goodbye to it during the Black Hole event at the end of Chapter 1. While this certainly acted as a fun way to bring the community together around this new creative mode, one person had a more devious plan to accomplish this. Only 2 days after its release, Scissors would reveal his impossible death run course, a challenge so difficult that he offered $1,000 and tons of free merch to the person who could beat it the fastest before the end of the year. Tens of thousands of players attempted to complete it, with most people crashing out long before they ever got close to the end.
There's a thing on top! Oh, Scissors! Scissors, man!
While Scissors definitely wasn't the first person to create a death run map in Fortnite, the hype that he brought to Creative would help spur an ever-growing wave of players determined to show off their insane mechanical skills in all kinds of different ways. But that's a larger topic we might just have to dive into in another video. However, there was an iconic event that happened in 2019 we have to cover: the Fortnite World Cup. A lot of you guys may not remember, but they didn't immediately start with Booga dominating his competition. Instead, it all began with the Fortnite Creative Finals. Thousands of players across the world submitted their best times on 5 different trial maps. Then the best players were selected and the 6 team captains, which actually included Ninja, Scissors, and Lachlan, each got to assemble their teams. After 3 lengthy rounds of domination, prop hunt, and of course a death run course, the $1.3 million first place prize went to no other than Scissors. whose team also included the original winner of his own Death Run challenge, Suzu. All in all, 2019 was an insane year for Fortnite Creative and the many content creators that arose from it. But things would only get bigger as players rushed back for Chapter 2. While most of us were focused on the new Battle Royale island, Lachlan was kicking things up a notch in creative. He partnered with Epic Games themselves to host the first official $10,000 Fortnite Fashion Show World Cup. I actually had the opportunity to compete in this Fashion Show World Cup, considering how many fashion show videos I was doing, and I ended up teaming up with Xdog and EvanTube, and we came in and won first place in this first official fashion show tournament. I ended up running it back with Ali A for the $20,000 tournament, and we ended up barely missing third place. Now, while some of us were still happy just using the mode to show off our fashion skills, other creators were starting to see the real potential to turn creative map making into a full-time job. Professional teams were starting to form like Team Power and Alliance Studios, and they were all starting to work with big brand names to bring their products and IPs into Fortnite. While we've all gotten used to seeing countless branded skins in the shop and plenty of sponsored creative maps on our feeds these days, it was very new at the time. We were also going through seasons like Nexus and 0 Point, which were filled with major IP collaborations like Marvel, DC, Star Wars, Street Fighter, and many, many more. At the time, the players weren't really used to having all these different collaborations. Nowadays, you can expect a new collab in Fortnite almost every single week, sometimes even multiple in a week. But back then, we weren't really getting a lot of collabs, and all of a sudden we started getting a ton. So there was some initial negative feedback from players feeling like the game was losing its identity and people preferring original Fortnite creations, but that did not stop the collaborations from coming through. And overall, I think it was a positive. And as the year 2020 was coming to a close, many players and creators were still wanting more from creative. Epic hadn't added much in terms of game-changing updates and instead decided to update Playground mode, changing it to Battle Lab. This new version increased the player count from 4 up to 15 and added a bit more customization, as well as the new AI bot grenades. Epic apparently intended for us to mostly use this mode to practice our aim, but aside from players like Laserbeam trying to break the game by spawning an infinite amount of bots, it wasn't really catching anyone's attention. But luckily, Epic was listening to the complaints, and in a live stream in December of 2020, we would get our first ever mention of Creative 2.0. We not only got an early look at the tools that would later become UEFN, but we even got to see the beginning stages of Verse, Epic's new programming language. They originally gave us a soft release date of 2021, and we were very hopeful. Unfortunately, 2021 would prove to be one of the lowest years for Fortnite in general. Seasons like Primal, Invasion, and Cubed are still often regarded as 3 of the least popular seasons, and just to add salt to the wound, Creative 2.0 would receive its first delay, making for a rather bitter end to an otherwise amazing chapter. While few of us went into 2022 with high hopes, Chapter 3 would drop with all the bells and whistles, pulling us all back in with Flipped. A season full of memorable collabs, fan favorite POIs, and a million other reasons for players to jump back into the game. The creative scene was still pretty stagnant though, without much in the way of major updates even as we entered into Season 2. But with all the attention going to the introduction of zero builds, maybe that was for the best. As Chapter 3 continued though, and hype around zero builds evened out, players were starting to lose interest and began turning back to creative maps, including myself. This is when I personally started getting into creative the most. Me and Courage were frequently teaming up for things like Fortnite trivia with the community, Guess Who, and crazy death run maps. And there was always someone like Nick, Typical Gamer, or McCreamy hosting a new fashion show or hide and seek. I even hosted a massive 100 player streamer only hide and seek with some Fortnite OGs like Squatting Dog and Punisher, where I actually had a few cheats up my sleeve to spice things up. Fortnite Creative became the go-to spot again for content creators looking to try something new, and it was actually refreshing. It also gave me the opportunity to connect with you guys in fun ways, like my very first "You build, I'll buy" video. This was the first time I actually got to see what was possible in Fortnite Creative, because I invited some of the most talented creative experts to build something that I could buy for them. And two of the finalists in this video actually built something for charity. One of them was for a children's hospital providing books for children in need, and the other one was a gamer setup for kids who want to play games while they're in the hospital. Overall, this was a very wholesome moment and amazing to see what was possible in creative over 3 years ago. And as we got towards the end of chapter 3, people were eagerly waiting for news on Creative 2.0, but sadly, the only news we got was 2 more delays. Until March 22nd, 2023. Tim Sweeney walked onto the stage at GDC for the State of Unreal presentation and revealed to the world Creative 2.0, otherwise known as Unreal Engine for Fortnite, was officially available to the public. Every Fortnite streamer was locked in on this announcement, and Epic didn't just announce things, they actually showed us some of the maps that they made using UEFN, and this was our first impression of these maps. We got to see things in Fortnite that we have never seen before, graphics and models that were never possible on the old Creative, and the best part is me and other streamers were able to hop in right after the announcement and actually check these maps out. From Desert Domination to a unique story map with a flying dragon, it all looked extremely promising, and the future for Fortnite Creative was looking brighter than ever. During their huge reveal, they would also announce that creators would finally have the chance to earn money from their maps. A huge chunk of the earnings that Epic was pulling in from the item shop was now up for grabs to those who were willing to put in the work and create maps that players wanted to play. The race was on. Professional and amateur developers were flocking to UEFN in hopes of making a full-fledged game and massive maps inside of Fortnite. One part-time developer in particular would find so much success from his earlier maps like Athena Royale that he actually ended up quitting his longtime job as a trauma nurse to form his own development team, Good Gamers. While he and his team have made several popular maps over the years, none have maintained the crazy success that Bed Wars and Murder Mystery still see more than 2 years after their release. While both map concepts were originally popular in other games like Minecraft and Garry's Mod, their renditions of them were very polished and easy for Fortnite players to get hooked on. So it was no surprise that this team also eventually caught the attention of Epic Games themselves and would be asked to work alongside Alliance Studios to create their Soundwave concert series. The first couple concerts did so well that Epic asked them to return and play an even larger role in the creation of Epic's biggest concerts, Kid Leroy's Wild Dreams, which was created in UEFN. As we jumped into this concert, a lot of people didn't know what to expect. The previous concerts were very great visual experiences like Travis Scott and Ariana Grande, where your character is just watching things unfold in front of them. However, this one was very different. While we did have some amazing visuals, it was the most interactive concert we had seen with the help of it being built on UEFN. But there were several other content creators starting their own development teams as well, including myself. I was extremely excited at the opportunity of UEFN and what the future could hold. So much so that I recruited some of the top Fortnite content creators to come together on a single project, our own version of Fortnite Battle Royale, and we were gonna call it Project VFN. And obviously, to pull this off, we would need a development team. So instead of finding something outside, I decided to create my own Fortnite dev team, Superjoy Studios. People were finally taking creative map design seriously again, and many of the maps that came out during those first few months truly pushed the bar. We started seeing a huge variety in the types of maps that were coming out, and there was success across the board. Like Fortnite Funland, an interactive theme park map that was created by Nick A30 that gave players a very unique, non-combat, family-friendly experience. Or Atlas OG Battle Royale, a recreation of the Chapter 1 map, which a lot of people were rushing to do, but this one actually came pretty close to achieving it, and there was so much hype on social media about this, it absolutely went viral. Or Only Up by Army, a recreation of a popular Steam game, but a free version on Fortnite that ended up reaching record-breaking numbers at the time. and mini game box PvP, taking what Fortnite was good at, like building and gunplay, but using a unique twist like mini games and bringing the classic box PvP format to create a brand new experience that players didn't even know they wanted. Despite having all these tools and all these unique map experiences, most players were still focused on competitive maps like 1v1s, box fights, zone wars. Those were still the maps on top, and they weren't really going anywhere. So when I made my first UEFN map, I wanted to add a unique twist to the format that players actually loved. So we created Rocket Wars, a Zone Wars map, but we were able to use the UEFN tools to add MVP win screens, which was something that maps didn't have at that time. Players absolutely loved this unique concept, and we even added some rare ones with some prizes that you could win just by playing the game. And as a result, the map was very popular and shot up to thousands of players. Now, while Rocket Wars these days is not as popular, it had a solid run where it averaged thousands of players for its first couple of years. And with that in mind, trends were changing constantly. Some maps would rise to the top and go down just as quickly as they rose. Some maps would last a few months before fizzling out. And if a map became extremely popular, some people would make their own version of that map. Like just with the only uptrend, creators like Tim the Tatman, Nick A30, Typical Gamer, and many more made their own version of Only Up. And speaking of Typical Gamer, he actually entered the UEFN scene by launching his own gun game map called Fortnite. And to kick it off, he had a $10,000 tournament where he invited a bunch of streamers to compete. And when Tycoon maps started to become more popular, I came out with my own unique Tycoon called Coin Clash. Coin Clash was a map I was extremely passionate about. I wanted to take unique concepts from games that I've played in the past, like MMOs, and bring them into Fortnite. We also came out with a superhero simulator map called Superhero City, and a classic OG Fortnite gun game. So we were trying all kinds of different things to see what works and what doesn't. And none of that would be possible without a little bit of help from Alienware, because their hardware is at the core of Superjoy Studios. They allow us to reliably push the boundaries of UEFN no matter where the team is working. Even when I'm traveling, I often need to playtest new updates with the team. And to do this, I rely on their Area 51 gaming laptop featuring the latest Intel Core processor to guarantee I'm getting the smoothest and fastest gameplay possible. On my recent trip to Mexico City, I took this thing everywhere with me, and I'm so glad I had it. Whether we're modeling a massive Kraken or designing our own BR, Alienware has us covered. You can check out all of their incredible hardware options by clicking the link in the description. Thank you again to Alienware for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to the video. While all of these maps had their own little moment in the spotlight, the constant chase to keep up with trends was leading us further from the original idea of making full-fledged games in Fortnite. On top of that, the new tools ultimately had more limitations than we had originally expected, which is why we ended up putting Project VFN on hold. A huge concept like that would need a lot more development time, and UEFN just wasn't anywhere near where it needed to be for that to be reality. Creative 2.0 was so close to being the serious game changer it was meant to be, but it just needed one more big update, something to really unlock its potential and deliver on the hype it originally built up. But in December of 2023, we would instead see the game take an entirely different direction as we entered the Fortnite metaverse. Epic had been building up to this for years. Lego Fortnite, Rocket Racing, Fortnite Festival. The full culmination of all their newly acquired IPs and big partnerships had been all leading up to this. This was a huge moment for everyone who played Fortnite, especially content creators. Our eyes were lit up with the possibilities of all these unique worlds coming to the game, all kinds of different genres away from the battle royale concept that we grew to love, but can coexist in the Fortnite ecosystem. But now, Creative 2.0 was just a piece of this grand idea for Fortnite. The game was getting split very thin. Gone were the days of just Battle Royale and Creative. Now there were an endless number of modes that you could choose, even just from Epic alone. Rocket Racing launched with 3 different modes, including its own ranked mode. Fortnite Festival had Main Stage, Jam Stage, and would later get Battle Stage. Lego had Sandbox and Survival modes, but would also get Expeditions and Brick Life. And Fall Guys was there, And only a few months later, we would even see the introduction of first person in Fortnite with the release of Ballistic. An addition we had waited for years to see would be released as an unfinished competitive mode that was quickly drowned out in a sea of other options. Not the least of which were the dozens of other BR focused modes and the countless creative maps that were coming out every day. Our homepages were becoming a mess. Discover was overloaded and the algorithm was struggling to keep up with it all. Epic's focus was unclear, and this left many creative map developers feeling cautious of their commitment to the game. Without a clear direction, the whole scene became an even bigger battle for attention that ended up rewarding creators for gaming the system, clickbaiting, or simply copying successful maps more than it did actual creativity. With the addition of more playtime XP and quests that allowed players to easily grind out their battle pass in creative maps alone, many map designers immediately used this to trick players and skyrocket their maps. We quickly saw the rise of XP farming maps, asking players to wait upwards of an hour if they wanted to unlock the real XP bonus. Other creators were using deceiving graphics to bait players into liking and favoriting their maps with promises of XP or special items. And while many shady creators did sadly end up making money from these tactics, it would come at the cost of altering the entire landscape of creative. With not a lot of creativity happening and increased drama in the creative scene, many players would end up quitting entirely during this time period or would simply stick to the same handful of reliable maps that they had been playing since the start. While others began viewing creative as just the mode you play to help you complete your battle pass at the end of a slow season. Despite all of this, there were still some determined developers that kept doing their best to make unique maps for the community. RPG and boss fight focused maps were getting a lot of positive attention by creating new gameplay loops that attracted more casual players. Two of the biggest maps in this genre were the Kraken boss fight and Valhalla, both pulling in thousands of players daily for almost their entire first year of release. But even smaller creative teams found success in the genre, like Future Trash, a studio you probably know better from their IP, Fode. Originally starting as a failed indie game on Steam, Fode found a new audience in Fortnite during this time. The studio was able to repurpose these game assets into a number of fun creative maps, including Boom Boss Fight. The map brought back the bright colors and cartoon vibes that Fortnite was originally famous for, while showing off the studio's knack for humor and unique enemy mechanics. Of course, these weren't the only maps capitalizing on the growing casual audience. The party game genre was quickly picking up steam, appealing to those looking for a balance of chaos and competition. Zombie Escape Tag was an early top contender during the genre's 2024 rise. While the mode originally came from a Counter-Strike mod over a decade prior, it found a home in Fortnite, feeling like a competitive mashup of death runs and parkour maps. And while the map has received several updates and remains a favorite in the genre today, it never spurred on a trend as big as the Pillars. What started as a popular server game in Minecraft skyrocketed in Fortnite, with hundreds of variations flooding out after the first few took off. While the trend eventually got a little out of hand, it did attract a lot of new players to the party games genre. And ultimately, genres like these were the ones actively pushing to utilize all the new tools that UEFN was offering, and it was offering a lot more. We were finally seeing UEFN become a serious tool for game design, with more and more professional features from Unreal Engine 5 being added. Unfortunately, UEFN still had some major issues. If you didn't already know, the program is technically still in beta, with countless features being added or removed or changed every week. But with each weekly update, it's almost expected that something might break on your map, often without any clear reason why. This leads to developers spending more time fixing their maps than actually building them. And you might think this was just an issue a couple of years ago and now things are more stable. While the game-breaking updates don't happen as often, they still happen often enough. My team recently released a map called Catch a Kraken, and after the first day it was released, there was an update the next day that completely broke the map. My developers had to spend an entire week pretty much just fixing the map, getting it back to its original state, and it did kind of mess with the launch of this map. And while I have the advantage of having a full development team, if this happens to a solo developer, it might set them back weeks or even months. These inconsistencies make it really hard for teams and developers to fully commit to spending time and money and resources on any Fortnite map. By 2025, all of these different issues were starting to add up, leading players to seek out other games like Roblox, one of Fortnite's longtime competitors. Epic spent the last 2 years stretching Fortnite thin, doubling down on their larger metaverse alongside their plans for the future of Fortnite Creative. All the while, Roblox was dialed in on one thing: accessibility. And I don't just mean accessible in terms of what platforms you can play it on, but accessible in that anyone can just jump in, and they can jump in quickly. Unlike Fortnite, whose base game has long been rooted in the mechanics and gameplay associated with the third-person shooter and battle royale games, Roblox never had that, making its barrier to entry non-existent. As long as you can somehow press a button, you can find something to play in Roblox, which also means developers have even fewer limitations on what type of games they can make. This level of accessibility allows Roblox to reach a much larger audience and presents itself as a true all-in-one gaming ecosystem, even if the actual quality of the games in Roblox might be lower in graphics. Because of this, it didn't take long before we began to see popular Roblox maps like Steal a Brain Rot to catch on in Fortnite. And it's not like Creative hasn't always been filled with fan-made versions of other games, but seeing how these maps now are reaching player counts higher than any other mode made it impossible to ignore. From a purely business perspective, I can understand why Epic and other map developers are trying their best to emulate what Roblox is doing well and seeing if they can tap into their growing audience. In a weirdly twisted way, we got our original wish. We were seeing distinct Creative 2.0 maps that felt nothing like Fortnite, but now we were actually starting to miss Fortnite. So what does the future hold for Creative? Epic is very aware that fans are disappointed with the state of the game, especially within the creative community. But they are determined to regain Creative status as the go-to place for both amateur and professional game designers. And just in the last few months, we finally got 3 long-awaited features that, with time, could change everything. One of the most important ones being Thin Client. This allows players to download individual maps and modes as standalone games without having to download or launch the entire game. Currently, this is only available for mobile players, but this gives them the opportunity to jump into Creative quicker and easier than ever, breaking down the biggest barrier that kept Roblox a step ahead of Fortnite. This feature is expected to come to PC and console players soon as well. For them, it'll mean faster loading times since they're going to be able to choose exactly which map or mode to join without waiting for anything else to update. We also got Fortnite Communities, which allows developers to easily keep their communities updated on map changes and lets players give direct feedback without even leaving the game. But the most recent addition is that creators are now able to sell items on their maps using V-Bucks, which might seem a little bit controversial, but if done right, could allow Fortnite developers to compete with Roblox and Minecraft in terms of revenue streams. And it also might encourage people to create more high-quality games if they have more guaranteed revenue from those games. But time will tell. And this is all on top of the many updates that went under the radar, like the official release of physics mechanics, experimental custom items, and soon the release of full custom weapons. Fortnite Creative has gone through a lot of change since it was introduced 7 years ago. Content creators have come and gone, trends have peaked and fallen. But at its heart, the real community has always been there. And while we have had to wait a few years, we are so close to getting some of the key features that are really going to ramp up the creative scene and help us catch up to the competitor, which is Roblox. Which is why, despite the issues and delays to key features, the future of Fortnite is looking promising in the hands of Creative. And I'm looking forward to what insane new ideas and maps end up popping off in 2026. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.